What if I told you that some of the biggest heists in history didn't happen in movies, but in real life? Criminals who managed to get into vaults that were almost impossible to open. Syndicates that stopped an entire city just to steal a single truck. Thieves who dug tunnels for months, pretended to be police officers, or even made money rain from the sky just to escape. These are not legends. These are real heists, planned like military operations, carried out in just a few minutes, and in many cases, still unsolved to this day. Today, we will also look into some of the most daring, smartest, and most unbelievable robberies ever committed by people. But before we start, if you're new to our channel, make sure to subscribe so you'll always be updated with videos like this. The Great Train Robbery. At 3 a.m. on August 8, 1963, a Royal Mail train was traveling from Glasgow to London. Inside the second carriage, called the high-value package coach, hundreds of mail bags filled with money were ready to be delivered, but the train was about to make an unscheduled stop. As the engine approached Sears Crossing, the driver saw the red signal light. He immediately stepped on the brakes. The assistant tried to call the next station, but the telephone line was already cut. Suddenly, masked men boarded the train. They grabbed the assistant and warned him, "If you scream, I'll kill you." The driver tried to fight back, but one of the robbers struck him on the head with a metal rod. At the same time, the group entered the carriage containing the money. 4 postal workers tried to resist, but they were quickly overpowered, injured, tied up, and gagged. The gang planned everything. They cut the telephone lines, sabotaged the signal system, and it was clear that they were after millions. But there was one problem. They brought a retired train driver to operate the engine, but he was stunned. He couldn't understand the modern brake system of the train. Because of this, there was only one option left. They forced the injured Royal Mail driver to drive the train. Despite his injuries, he slowly drove the train toward Brightego Bridge. There, the other members of the gang were waiting along with a convoy of military-looking trucks. They formed a human chain as they passed the mail bags full of money from the train to the vehicles. By 3:30 in the morning, they had already taken more than 120 bags. Inside them was £2.6 million, equivalent to more than £70 million today. After tying up the train crew, the gang quickly escaped into the darkness. They say it was believed that they had pulled off the perfect crime. Meanwhile, nearly 50 other postal workers in another carriage had no idea what had happened. The gang headed to their safe house at Leatherslade Farm. They started counting the money, but their celebration didn't last long. A police bulletin had already gone out, and everyone was looking for military-colored trucks. One of the thieves even tried to paint a vehicle yellow, but he ran out of paint. The police gradually pieced the puzzle together. Just a small detail, like a postal worker remembering the 30-minute rule, led them to realize that the gang's hideout was nearby. When the group sensed that the place was no longer safe, they started to leave one by one, using fake names. The next day, the farm looked abandoned, but a nearby farmer, after hearing about the reward, reported it to the police. When the authorities searched the farmhouse, it was like they hit the jackpot of evidence. Mail bags, vehicles, equipment, burned banknote wrappers, and hundreds of fingerprints. There were even fingerprints on the Monopoly board that the thieves used while playing with the stolen money. What they thought was a perfect heist fell apart just because of one imperfect hiding place. Just a few days later, arrests happened one after another. There were roadblocks in different places as the gang was chased all over London. Some were caught while paying rent with the stolen money, while others were chased across the rooftops of buildings. If you think about it, the robbery itself was almost perfect, but their escape was messy, rushed, and just the beginning of their downfall. So if you're enjoying this intense story, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell because the next heist will be even crazier than this one. The Antwerp Diamond Heist, Antwerp, Belgium. Antwerp, Belgium is known as the diamond capital of the world. Thousands of carats of diamonds pass through this city every day. And at the center of it all is the Antwerp Diamond Center, a fortress of wealth where some of the most valuable diamonds in the world are stored. But in 2003, an incident shook the world of security. Inside the vault, over $100 million worth of diamonds were hidden behind thick steel. And this was no ordinary vault. It had more than 100 layers of security. The laser sensors could detect even the slightest movement. The magnetic locks required codes that changed every few hours. The pressure-sensitive floors could detect even a single step. And the guards patrolled every hallway, watching the CCTV cameras as if they never slept. Most people wouldn't even dare try to break into this place. But one group of highly skilled thieves didn't just try, they actually prepared for it. For many months, they studied the building, the guards, and even the habits of the employees. They created a map of every hallway, every lock, and every security system. They knew when the guards made their rounds and when the alarms were most sensitive. They weren't reckless, they were professionals. When the night of the heist came, everything had to be perfect. The thieves entered slowly like shadows. They bypassed the security systems using tools and skills that seemed impossible. They disabled the alarms, avoided the cameras, slipped past the laser sensors, and reached the vault. They opened the locks one by one, the locks that were considered unbreakable. In just a few hours, they emptied the contents of the vault. Diamonds worth $100 million. Not a single guard was harmed. No alarm went off. And when they disappeared into the darkness of the night, it was as if the vault had never been touched. What happened next was even more shocking than the heist itself. The aftermath. The authorities were confused. A robbery in a place considered impenetrable. Belgium launched one of the biggest investigations in its history. Employees were questioned, the entire place was searched, and the black market was combed for possible clues. But every lead disappeared. No fingerprints. No CCTV footage. No solid evidence. It's like the diamonds just vanished into thin air. Over the years, some members of the group were caught because of other cases, but most of the diamonds were never recovered. Until now, what happened in the Antwerp diamond district remains a mystery. The heist became legendary, not just because of the amount stolen, but because of the incredible skill and daring of the plan. Something that seemed impossible, yet was pulled off so easily. And until now, many people still have the same question. How did they really do it? And where are the diamonds now? The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, Thames. In the early hours of March 18, 1990 in Boston, Massachusetts. The city is quiet. The noise of the day is gone and the silence is almost eerie. It feels like even the smallest sound echoes. Inside the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, the security guards are busy with their usual rounds. Unaware that history is about to change, two men arrived wearing Boston police uniforms. They looked official, their movements calm and confident. Their story was believable. The guards were told that something was happening outside and that they needed to inspect the museum. Because they trusted the uniforms, the guards immediately agreed. But once inside, everything suddenly changed. Taking advantage of the situation, the imposters tied up the guards and locked them in the museum basement. From there, they began to choose their targets. They didn't just steal without a plan. They knew exactly which masterpieces were the most valuable, rare, irreplaceable, and could never be replaced. For 81 minutes, the thieves calmly walked through the museum as they took 13 pieces of art one by one. These included works by Vermeer, Rembrandt, and Degas. Some paintings were even cut directly from their frames to make them easier to carry. After almost an hour and more than 20 minutes, everything was over. By the time the guards got free, it was already too late. The thieves were gone, as if they vanished into the darkness of the night. The stolen items are now estimated to be worth around $500 million. But for the experts, the real loss is even greater because those masterpieces can never be replaced. After the crime, Boston was shocked. The FBI launched one of the biggest investigations. Collectors, criminals, and even former museum employees were questioned in one of the biggest art investigations ever. But decades passed and there was no clear lead. Suspects came and went. Tips gave hope but led to nothing, and clues didn't lead to any results. Until now, the stolen masterpieces have still not been found. Inside the museum itself, you can still see the empty frames, silent reminders of a crime that remains unsolved. The reason why this became a legend is not just because of the amount involved, but also because of the boldness and precision with which it was carried out. People who pretended to be police officers operated in the middle of the night and escaped without a trace. Until now, this remains one of the biggest art mysteries in the world. Who took the masterpieces and where are they now? The Banco Central Burglary, Brazil. In the early hours of August 2005 in the city. On a quiet residential street, nothing seemed suspicious about a simple house. But inside, a group of criminals had been quietly working for months, preparing for one of the most audacious bank heists in history. They weren't ordinary thieves. They rented a house directly above the Banco Central Vault, and there they made their secret plans. For months, they dug a tunnel that was 78 meters long, straight, neat, and reinforced. They did all this without the neighbors noticing. The tunnel was almost like an engineering project. It had lights, ventilation, and even rail tracks for the heavy bags of money. Every day, they secretly removed the soil and debris so no one would notice. When the appointed night came, they made their move. They broke into the Banco Central Vault and bypassed the alarms and security systems that could stop most criminals. Inside, they carefully took the bags of money. More than $70 million, all neatly bundled in Brazilian reais. They carried them one by one back through the tunnel towards their getaway vehicles. Silent, organized, like a military operation, no one was harmed. No trace of fingerprints. No clear evidence except for the 78-meter tunnel that seemed like a ghostly passage to the vault. In just a few hours, they were gone. In the investigations that followed, authorities scrambled. The Brazilian police and federal investigators launched a massive manhunt. They examined every detail of the tunnel, every street, every possible lead. But even though hundreds of suspects were investigated, most of the money was never found. Only a small portion was recovered after several years. Most of it came from small-time criminals who didn't even know where the money came from. The Banco Central Burglary became a legend, a heist that seemed impossible on paper, but was accomplished because of patience, discipline, and engineering brilliance. To this day, it is remembered as a heist where intelligence triumphed over force, and a group of seemingly ordinary people escaped with tens of millions while the world was left in shock and wonder. The Hatton Garden Heist, London, United Kingdom. Easter 2015. The city was quiet. Most businesses were closed and people were on vacation. But in the middle of the Hatton Garden District, a place known for the most valuable safe deposit vaults in the UK, a group of men in their 60s and 70s were preparing for a heist that would shock the whole world. They weren't rookie criminals. Instead, they were veterans. Men with decades of experience in burglary and heists. Most of them had long been retired, but their knowledge of crime never faded. Using that experience, they devised a plan to break into the Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company during the long holiday weekend, when security was lighter and most of the staff were away. On the night of the operation, they didn't use brute force. There were no doors being blown open, no commotion. Instead, everything was done slowly and carefully. They disabled the alarm systems, manipulated the men, and the heavy steel gates that should have been impossible to open were lifted using knowledge and strategy. The most critical moment was when they started drilling into the 50-centimeter thick concrete wall of the vault, a task that required extreme patience, precision, and time. After many hours of quiet drilling, the way inside was opened. Inside, thousands of safe deposit boxes were said to be arranged, filled with jewelry, money, gold, and items with sentimental and financial value that people had kept safe for decades. They opened the boxes one by one, in an orderly, systematic way and without commotion. While they were doing this, millions of pounds slowly disappeared, while the entire operation left almost no trace. Amazingly, they didn't look like crime experts at first glance. They were just old men. But inside the vault, they moved like men half their age. Calm, quick, and precise. By Easter weekend, the group was already out. They were estimated to have taken around 14 million pounds and vanished from the city like smoke. But this is not where it all ends. The London police launched one of the biggest investigations in the city's history. They used CCTV footage, forensic analysis, and thousands of tips from the public. Despite the gang's careful planning, they left behind small mistakes, traces that eventually led to them. They were identified one by one, and within just a few months, many of them were arrested. Some parts of the stolen treasure were recovered, but a large portion of it still hasn't been found to this day. The Hatton Garden heist became legendary not just because of the amount stolen, but because of who committed it. A group of elderly men, former criminals, used their experience, patience, and intelligence to pull off a perfectly timed heist. It's proof that sometimes it's not strength or youth that wins, but experience and strategy. The Brazil armored truck heist, Sao Paulo, Brazil. An ordinary morning in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The streets are quiet, traffic is normal, and there's no sign that anything unusual will happen. But in an instant, everything will change. Suddenly, a large number of armed men appeared, wearing military-style uniforms, riding vehicles that looked like they came from a war zone instead of the city streets. This isn't just a group of criminals. They look like an organized army. Their target was armored trucks carrying millions in cash, and their plan was surprisingly systematic and perfectly executed. In just a few minutes, they started blocking highways and main roads using trucks, cars, and even motorcycles. Drivers suddenly had to stop. People panicked. Some were running, some were hiding, and some couldn't believe what was happening. It was as if the city suddenly turned into a war zone. The thieves moved as if they were battle-hardened. They communicated through radios. Every move was coordinated, and they controlled the flow of traffic as if they owned the city. Anyone who tried to stop them could get caught up in the violence. Then the armored trucks arrived, unaware that they were the next target. In just a few moments, the armed men rushed the trucks. They used power tools to open the reinforced compartments. The security guards tried to fight back, but they were quickly surrounded. This was no simple holdup. It was a coordinated assault. They took the cash bags from the armored trucks one by one. Then they quickly loaded them into the getaway vehicles. The entire operation was finished in just a few minutes. Before the police could respond, the group was already gone. They vanished into the maze-like streets of Sao Paulo like ghosts. All that was left was smoke, blocked traffic, and people still in shock from what they had witnessed. When the authorities arrived, they described the scene as pure chaos. Abandoned vehicles, closed roads, and witnesses who still couldn't believe what had happened. It all happened in a real life. Despite the extensive investigation, many members of the group escaped, and a large portion of the stolen money was never recovered. The Brazil armored truck heist was not just a simple robbery. It was an operation that resembled a small war in the middle of the city, a planned assault carried out with military precision, speed, and coordination. And until now, it remains one of the most dramatic armored truck robberies in history. Proof that in the world of crime, sometimes the law's enemy is not just a simple thief, but organized forces like an army.